Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the React plus TypeScript series. Today we are going to be going over useState. But in the last video, we did our prop types where we specified the props that can be passed through our component with TypeScript. And I forgot to mention a few things. So basically, see right here we have the shape of our object, which is the props that we're passing down to this Pokemon card component. And so with these props, if we go back and I called the Pokemon card component right here, and so we have name and moves, but we specified that there needs to be a name, number, and moves. So TypeScript's going to give us a little error. So it says number is missing in type. Blah, 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 all this stuff when we hover over it. So if I put in the number though, just say 1, the error goes away. And then the same goes, we get an error if I try passing in the wrong type. So it says type string is not a citable type number because we define the number as a number. So yeah. There we go. And also, if you have props that you want to be optional, what you can do is in your interface in front of the name, you can just put a question mark and that makes it optional. So now if we go back and we remove number, we won't get a error message. Okay, moving on to the topic of the video. We're going to be using useState. So basically, oops, sorry about that. In our app, we're gonna want a input right here, and then we can put in the index of a Pokemon because each Pokemon in the Pokédex has like a certain number that marks its like index or whatever. So like Bulbasaur is like number 1, like Pikachu, I don't know, but they all have like a certain number that marks their spot in the Pokédex. So we're gonna what we want to do is that we want the user to input the number, and then it will make a fetch out to the Poke API and get us the Pokemon at that index. So how are we going to save the number in our application? Well, we can use something called useState. Use. So with this function, you basically pass in the initial value that you want your state to be. So for this, we'll just pass in that we want it to be a string of 1. And so what this function returns to us is an array. And over here, what we can do is that we destructure the array. So, and then the first value is going to be the value of the state at the current iteration, and I'll explain what that means in a second, and then a value that will update our state. So we have index and set index, and you can name these whatever you want. All right, so if we put our index down here, we display it on the screen. Sorry, this is when I was doing some stuff earlier. Let me refresh this. What is going on here? Oh, I didn't start my thing. 1 second. All right, so yes. Hold up. So this function that's passed back is called the second parameter in our destructured array is a updater function. So basically, whenever we want to update this value right here, we use this function and we pass in the new value. And so I will show you that in a second. Okay, so let's make the input that the user can use to put in a number. So we'll make a number input. We don't need all this stuff. And so we'll have an onChange. And then we will get the events back from that. And then we're going to set the index to the e.target.type. value. So we're using this updater function that we have over here. So let's go back, and then if we put in a number over here, as you can see, the number at the top is updating, and we had it right here. So basically what's happening when this updater function is called is that it causes the component to re-render. And by re-render, I mean this function, our functional component, is called again with the new value at index. So to start off, our value starts out as 1. But if we change it, go back here, so say we put in, we put in like 2, and we set the index, what's going to happen is that this will now be 2. And the whole function is going to be recalled over again, and now this value is going to be 2. So let's put this back here. So yeah, that's basically how useState works in a nutshell. And there is also one other thing that you can do with useState, and it's that you can pass in a callback function, and this is called a lazy initializer. So like I was saying before, every time your component re-renders, this function is called all over again. So that means that everything inside this component is also put back. It's like also recalled. So all this code inside the component runs again. So say we had an expensive function that we wanted to use as our beginning state. So let's just say expense function. So each time this component re-rendered, if we had this expensive function, it would be recalled every single time. So what you can do is that you can pass it, useState, a callback. And what this does, a callback function is, and what this does is that it makes sure that the value that's inside the function, inside the call, that's returned from the callback, is only called once when the component is first initialized, but no other time after that. So when we so if we were to reset the index and we set it to a new thing, it would cause the component to re-render, but this would not be run again. It would just memorize the value that was returned from this before, and then it would keep it there. So yeah, that's pretty much it for useState. And so there's a few rules that you need to know about just like hooks in general, and it's that you can't put hooks in conditional. So if I try doing if one and then I put useState inside of it, if I hover over it, it'll give me an error. It says React hook useState is called conditionally. React hooks must be called in the exact same order in every component render. So we can't do that. And you can only use hooks in functional components. Moving on, how do we use hooks or useState with TypeScript? So what we can do is that we can put these brackets right here, and then we can specify the type that we want passed into this function. So for this useState, we only want there to be a string value inside our thing. So because of this, since I specified this, if you go over here and then we try putting a 3 or something like that, we will get an error now. It says argument type number is not assignable to parameter type blah blah blah. And so that gives us type safety with our useState. And so you can pass pretty much any type to this. You can make like an interface, and you can have interface is foo, and you can have num or foo string, and then you can also put this in here. And then there might be a case where you want different where you want to have more than one type inside that you want to be passed inside. So you can use the or operator. So say we want a string or a number. So now we can put a string, or we can put a number, and we won't get any errors. You can do string or null. We can do all this stuff. Okay, yeah. All right. So we'll keep this as a string. And then e.target.value. So you might be wondering what exactly this is. So this is called a TypeScript generic. And basically what a TypeScript generic is it's like kind of just like a reusable way to have type safety for a function that can be passed like a bunch of different types. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so we'll make a function and we'll just call it print. So we'll just say val, and then we'll do console log val. So with this function, we want to, there's going to be like a whole bunch of different like types that we want, but we still want type safety for the function. So we don't want to do any, because that means that's no different from regular JavaScript. We're not going to have any type safety at all. So what TypeScript lets us do is it lets us use something called a generic. So if I go boom, boom, and boom. So this is basically just a reusable way of having type safety for one function. So now, since I use my TypeScript generic, what I can do is I can say prints, but I only want this print to take a string. So if I pass in a string, it's good. But if I pass in a number, it's an error. And then, so say I want to only have this print pass in a number. I get an error right here because I'm passing in a string. But if I pass in a number, there you go. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for useState. So right now we have this input that changes when we put in new values, and next video we're going to be moving on to useEffect. So I will see you then.